AnneDiamond here with you on BBC Radio Berkshire. There's no doubt we've got a very good excuse at the moment to be talking about the weather. It isn't what I was promised. Somebody promised me an Indian summer, and you look out today and it just ain't happening, is it? Mind you, there are bigger stories to be talked about within the weather as well, because the next 2 years, they're saying, are likely to be among the warmest on record. That's according to the latest research by the Met Office. It says this is due to a weather phenomenon called El Niño, which we've heard about before, haven't we? Combined with man-made climate change. But the Met Office is also predicting that summers in Europe could get cooler for a while as the rest of the globe warms up. Great. Paul Williams is with us now. He's a climate scientist from the University of Reading. And Paul was involved, I think, in this report. A very good afternoon to you, Paul.
Good afternoon, Anne. No, I wasn't involved in the report, but I do know the people
you're
who did
across it.
Yes.
Right. So is this a combination of the two factors, El Niño, which actually you must remind us what that is, and man-made climate change ongoing?
Yes, it's a reminder, isn't it, that the climate system is a very complicated thing and there's all sorts of different things going on at the same time. El Niño is a natural cyclic climate phenomenon that happens in the Pacific Ocean. And because the Pacific Ocean is such a large fraction of the globe, it has an impact on the global average temperature. So we know that El Niño, which is a warming of parts of the Pacific, El Niño is underway right now. We know from satellite observations that parts of the Pacific are 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than normal, and the computer models are predicting that they'll continue to get warmer, maybe 2 to 3 degrees warmer than normal in the coming months. And that would make...
And that's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. In fact, it would be the strongest El Niño since at least the 1950s, so a very strong El Niño.
Why? Yeah, all right. So that's happening globally, and
Yes.
that's the phenomenon as El Niño. How is it going to affect us here in Britain?
That's a very good question. The strongest impacts of El Niño happen in the countries that border onto the Pacific. So, for example, there tends to be a lot of rain in California when there's an El Niño event, which would be very welcome, and so we might
put out some of the fires.
That's right, an end to the drought and the fires. In the UK, there are correlations with El Niño. They're weaker, but one of the important impacts might be less direct, and that is impacts on food prices. We do know that because of the droughts that El Niño brings to some parts of the world and flooding to others, that this has consequences. We know from previous El Niño events that the cost of things like coffee, rice, cocoa, all of these staple crops tend to go up in price when there's an El Niño event. So this might be one of the impacts that your listeners feel
There'll be a
in the coming
knock-on.
months. Yes, that's right.
It could last a couple of years at least.
Yes, yeah.
Gosh. And as I was saying in the introduction, these two things combined mean that the next 2 years could be the warmest on record, but we're not going to feel it here in Britain.
Well, I think I began by saying the climate's a complicated thing, and it's global warming, but that doesn't mean that there aren't local things going on.
It means global change, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. And our weather in the UK is affected a lot by the North Atlantic Ocean, and there's very different things going on there. The ocean circulation does tend to cycle from positive to negative, and that has a strong influence on our climate in the UK, and we're in a cold period at the moment, but that doesn't mean that there isn't the global warming going on as well behind it.
So, are the next 2 years going to be a bit miserable weather-wise then? Sorry, I mean, I'm always bringing it back to sort of local, aren't I, and Britain, but are they going to be a bit miserable?
It looks like they might be for us in the UK.
Oh, Lord.
But these seasonal forecasts, funnily enough, it's easier, for technical reasons I won't go into, but it's easier to forecast the global climate decades into the future than it is sometimes to forecast the local climate next year or in the coming months. That's a very different mathematical problem, it turns out. So the scientists tend to be a bit more cautious when talking about the coming months on these small scales within the UK.
Yeah, so when we're discussing our weather just from a domestic point of view, we see trends that you don't see. But all right, so the next 2 years might be a little bit miss. What about, if you're telling your grandchildren, the next 10 or 15 years?
Yes, well, and that's exactly where the climate scientists can say confident statements. So some people would say that there's been a slowdown in global warming. This has attracted a lot of publicity in the news. People call it a hiatus or a slowdown in global warming. And it is true that the warming has levelled off since about the year 2000 if you look at surface temperatures. But if you look at the other climate variables, they've continued to change. The amount of sea ice in the Arctic has continued to decline. The sea levels continue to rise. We know that the amount of heat that's being stored in the ocean has continued to increase. So there's only been a slowdown of global warming when you look through a very, very specific lens, if you see what I mean. It happens to be where we live, the surface of the Earth, which is why we focus on it.
Yes.
It's what we experience,
Yes.
but it's not the whole of the climate system. The rest of the climate system is continuing to show these global warming trends continuing into the future.
And these trends are happening no matter whether you choose to interpret them as man-made, or would happen anyway. They are definitely happening.
Yes, and about the climate system being complicated, yes, there's the long-term global warming that's the evidence shows is being driven by our greenhouse gas emissions. That's happening anyway. And there's also these cyclic variations on more regional scales, and they're happening as well. And this natural variability, there are periods of time when it's going to add to the global warming and other periods when it's going to subtract from it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, these natural phenomena have been going on for far longer than we started to influence the climate. But
there's no doubt we interact with the natural phenomena.
That's absolutely right, yes.
Interesting. Well, there's certainly, like I said, when you're in the weather, there's always something to talk about. Is there not? We'll talk again. But it's great to talk to you. Thank you very much today. That's Paul Williams there.